Beyond the Basics, Using Logic Models Through the Life of Your Program. My name is Marietta Factora, the Community Engagement Associate at the Asian and Pacific Islander American Health Forum, and I will be your moderator for today. Before we begin, I want to briefly cover some instructions on how to ask questions through GoToWebinar. On your screen, you should be able to see the control panel on the right side of your desktop. After 10 seconds, the control panel automatically collapses to the right side of your screen with only the Grab tab displayed. You can then use the double arrows at the very top to open or close the control panel. Please use the questions panel for any questions you would like to have addressed. We will be collecting your questions throughout the presentation, and we will have time at the end for a question and answer session. The primary objective for today's webinar is to increase your understanding of logic models and how to utilize them for program planning, implementation, and evaluation. I would like to go ahead and introduce our first presenter, Ms. Marianne Chung. Marianne is the Community Initiatives Director at the Asian and Pacific Islander American Health Forum that is based in our Washington, D.C. office. She has over 10 years experience with writing grants at the federal, state, foundation, and corporate level. At the Health Forum, Marianne has led numerous grant proposals for grants for the Department of Health and Human Services and the Office of Minority Health. Prior to joining the Health Forum, she worked successfully with grant writing teams at local community-based organizations serving Asian American communities in Atlanta, Georgia, and Cleveland, Ohio.
Thank you, Marietta, and good afternoon to everyone on the call. Can we turn to the next slide? Thank you. So first, I'd like to start with some polling to see who is with us virtually today. There will be a quick poll, so if you all could just click on what region you are coming from. After a few seconds, we should be able to see who is on the call with us today. Great, so it looks like about 45% of us are from the Northeast. It looks like a large contingency from the West. We do have representation from Southwest, Midwest, and Southeast. Great. Well, welcome everyone. Next quick poll is what sector do you work? So are you from a nonprofit, community health center, government agency, university research institution, or other? Great. As you can see, there's a large group of us that are from nonprofits, over almost 75%. And then there's also a contingency of government agencies, university, and other. Thank you and welcome. Next poll is how comfortable do you feel in using logic models? So very comfortable, moderately comfortable, slightly comfortable, or not at all comfortable with using logic models. Okay, thank you everyone for participating in the poll. So it looks like there's, about a good number of us are comfortable, either moderately comfortable, slightly comfortable with using logic models. There's some of us who are, just still learning, and then some of us that are very, very advanced. So thank you for that. My last question to you all is, and please type it in to the right of your screen, but have you used logic models in the past? How have you used logic models in the past? Great. Okay. So results will be presented on your screen, and it looks like over 65% of you all have used program planning, used logic models for program planting. 45% of you said you've used logic models for grant writing, and 23% have said other. I know that there is a chat button, and so for those of you who want to continue that conversation, please let us know what are some of the other ways you've used logic models in the past. Great. So more and more nonprofits today have been pressed to demonstrate the effectiveness of their program by initiating and completing outcome-oriented evaluations. Logic models are a very important tool that can assist nonprofits to better demonstrate their program's effectiveness. This webinar today will give you sufficient information to the underlying principles of logic modeling so that you can use logic models to enhance your program planning, your implementation, your dissemination strategies. A common problem is that our program's activities and our strategies often do not connect, or more likely than often it is just not apparent to the reviewers, to other partners about how they are connected to the desired outcomes. And so logic models helps make the connection more explicit, and thus the conversation in the comic on your screens talks about, from beginning to end. The middle part is just there's a miracle that occurs. So the next slide, what is a logic model? So a logic model is simply a roadmap, to provide stakeholders with a visual depiction of how human and financial investments can contribute to achieving your intended program goals and can lead to program improvements. So that is, it's the logical relationships between 1, the resources that you invested, 2, the activities that take place, and 3, the changes that you intend to make. Logic models can take different shapes and different forms and also vary in the amount of types of information included. Nonetheless, it is recommended that logic models for your programs look clean, they look as linear as possible to be understood by stakeholders who will view your program models and your evaluation report. So next slide. To be honest, when I first started program planning and grant writing, I used to create logic models only because it was what was required by the grant. And I would let it sit in my grant or in my computer rather than keeping it visible and using it as a way to track and monitor progress. I have to say I've come a long way, and logic models is the #1 tool, the #1 file that I continue to open when I have projects to continue to reference that plan or that roadmap. So today's webinar is all about making that logic model a living document. We'll walk through how to use logic models through the life of your program for planning, for implementation, and for evaluation. Using logic models for planning can be a powerful framework and process for communicating how you will bridge the gaps between where you are and where you want to be. Using logic models for implementation can be a powerful tool to help you achieve and document your results. Using logic models for evaluations can be a powerful first step for evaluation, showing the when and the what to evaluate. And I really want to emphasize this can be because this tool is only as good, it can only work as much for you as how you make it work. So next slide is first, I just wanted to quickly make sure that everyone is on the same wavelength of what I'm meaning when I say logic models. So logic models, to me, is just it's a fancy way for us to break down what we do naturally and what we do seamlessly in our programs into smaller modules, so that when it's examined, so that we can examine it, that we can tweak it in its individual parts. It is a useful tool to analyze what is working, what is not working in our programs. And it usually starts with a problem statement. So, a problem statement is a clear and concise statement of the problem that you want to address and the problem that you want to address that will help with the subsequent planning and execution of your programs. So we start with inputs, right? The inputs are what we invest. It's the time, it's the money, it's the people, it's the products. Then we have activities. Activities are what we actually will do. Is it a training? Are they services? Is it an evaluation? What do we create? What do we develop? Outputs are the products from those activities. Outcomes are the results or the changes that are planned or desired. So is there increased knowledge, increased skills? Was there a change in policies, behaviors, a change in the conditions? And the impact is a change that will happen. So if you can click. So reading a logic model means following the chain of reasoning of if-then statements, which connects all of the program parts. When we read from left to right, logic models describe the program basics over time from planning through results. So certain resources that are needed to operate your program, which is the inputs. If you have access to those inputs, then you can use them to accomplish your plan activities. If you accomplish your plan activities, then you will hopefully deliver the amount of product or the service that you intended, which is the outputs. If you accomplish your planned activities to the extent that you intended, then your participants will benefit in a certain way, which is your outcomes. And if these benefits to participants are achieved, then certain changes in the organization, communities, or systems might be expected to occur, which is the impact. So on the next slide, I wanted to give you just a sample logic model. So my problem or my need is that I have 6 hungry friends in my living room. What do I have or what can I get are the inputs to help with this problem. If I have access to those inputs, I have access to money, to peanut butter and jelly and bread and utensils and people to make sandwiches, then I can purchase the ingredients and assemble the sandwich. If I accomplish the activities of purchasing the ingredients and assembling the sandwich, then I can produce 6 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and have 6 friends who are fed. If I accomplish this, then the benefits are satisfaction to hunger, I've maintained their friendship, and I've increased their satisfaction in coming to my house to hang out because I can give them something to eat when their bodies are hungry. If these benefits are achieved, then it contributes to my friends appreciating me more and wanting to maintain friendships for a longer time. So simply, this is a logic model. Of course, yours, will be more important. Yours will be related to health or related to housing or related to education. But this is just a simple way to mapping out your plan or your projects so that others and yourself can see how the human and financial investments can lead to the intended results. Next slide. So now, first let's talk about how using logic models for planning can be a powerful framework and process for communicating how you will bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. In reality, this is the program's theory. The how and the why your program will work and the what it will accomplish is key, right? It's the answering of the how and the why and the what. It helps to build and share understanding of what the program is all about and how the parts work together. And it helps when you're thinking about planning, the logic model helps you to find gaps in your theory or your logic of the program, and it can help you to work to resolve those gaps. So next slide. So when using logic models for planning, it is helpful to work from the impact side of the logic model and move backwards in time through outcomes, finally leading to your outputs and activities. So it's moving from right to left, and I've numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when you're going from right to left, It's this piece about asking the question about how. In every juncture, in every connection, asking the question of how is a good way to focus on the ultimate goal and identifying activities that are focused specifically on the goal. You can go from left to right, but it sometimes tempts the program planners to begin with their existing desirable or possible activities and not necessarily the ones tied to a goal or an impact. So next slide. So I'm going to use my hypothetical situation again. I have identified the problem of having 6 hungry friends in my living room, and the impact that I want is that I want my friends to have a good time, and I want them to appreciate me more and want to maintain friendships for a long time. If I let them stay and let them be hungry, that may not happen. So when I start to think about how to address the problems, I identify that their main concern is that they are hungry and they need to find something that will decrease their hunger and increase their satisfaction in coming to my house to hang out. So if you can click, so what are my outputs? What are the things that I can, how can I satisfy their hunger? Is that I can feed them. I can feed them 6 peanut butter sandwiches while they are at my house. How will I be able to get to these outputs? If you could click again, leads to the activities, right? It's the purchasing of the ingredients, it's the assembling of the sandwich. And then, you know, again, to ask the question of how, again, it's that these are the inputs that I need to be able to successfully get to my activities, that will get to my objectives, that will get to my outcome, that will get to my impact, that will solve my problem. So as you can see, the resulting logic model helps to clarify and quickly conveys the overall plan and the interconnectedness of the various components. And now I have a greater chance of success in support, implementation, impact, because I use this tool for planning. Next slide. So imagine that you work for a funding organization. You know, each quarter you receive a mountain of grant proposals from worthy organizations doing good work. All of them need money, as I assume all of you all need money to fund your projects. But what information would you require to determine that your program, to determine which program is funded? Funders tell us that they look for organizations that have done their homework by clearly defining the problem that they plan to address, describing the reasons behind the approach, and outlining how they anticipate measuring their achievements. Funding decisions are more favorable if you can demonstrate clearly a deeper critical thinking and a deeper explanatory level of the how and the why you succeed. So theory of change logic models is one way to do that. So by presenting a logic model, that is a very basic way of talking about your project. But really what we are encouraging is this idea of a theory of change logic model is to really go to a deeper level to talk about the how and the why you will succeed in this program. It's talking about creating a sound case of why and the how the funder should invest in your program, and it provides a greater justification to your work. Talking about theory of change logic models could take us a full webinar, and so I encourage you to take a look at the link at the bottom of your screen. It's from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. I see that some of it has been cut off, but you can also type in using logic models to bring together planning, evaluation, and action. And they actually have a full chapter dedicated to the theory of change logic models, where they have a number of worksheets that can help walk you through the process that can help your logic models become stronger. So this is why I've said this is a logic model 2.0. So we would recommend that. Next slide. So second, let's talk about how using logic models for implementation can be a powerful tool to help you achieve and document your results. It's about putting your program theory to work, right? We've gone through the planning. We have a solid framework. We have a solid theory of why our project will attain the outcomes that we've proposed. Within here, within the implementation is where the relevant, the credible, and the useful performance data can be obtained. So next slide. Logic models help with the implementation, right? It's about where you're going, how you will get there, and what will show that you have arrived. It helps those inside and outside the organization understand and improve the purpose and the process of the work. You know, I really think, why create a roadmap if we don't want to follow it? So next slide. So why use logic models during implementation? These are some of the responses that we have gotten from past participants. So the first one, if you can click, is that it guides and helps focus our work, right? It provides a common language to articulate joint work across teams, across collaborators, across volunteers and funders. It helps us differentiate between what we do and the results, which are our outcomes. It helps facilitate conversations focused on the agreed upon goals. It provides coherence across complex tasks and different environments. So it's really, again, that roadmap, and now after your planning, after you've received the funding, it's about the implementation. So the second is to increase intentionality and purpose, as well as understanding of the program. It keeps the end outcomes up front and center for all parties who are working on the grant or the project. Next bullet is it enhances teamwork. You know, it can be a tool to motivate staff, and it can be a way for staff to see their contributions, partners to see their contributions, and how their results and how their work will lead us to the larger goal, and how really the results depend on all of us. Next bullet is that it guides the prioritization and the allocation of resources. So that's the staffing, the funding, the other resources. As resources are tight, it helps guide the prioritization of what we really need to do to be able to accomplish our program. Next slide is that it helps to identify important variables to measure, to use evaluation resources wisely, and we'll go into that a little bit further later in the presentation. And then finally, it supports replication. You know, it supports replication of this project for other groups within your network. It supports replication for this group for others across the country who want to do something similar to you. Next slide. These are some testimonials or aha moments from others who have been in your same position, who have used logic models for implementation. One person said, "Wow, so that's what my project is all about." So it's really about, you know, by seeing the bigger picture, staff can feel good about the job and the job well done. I've never seen our organization, our program, in one page before. In this age of quick messaging and quick conversations, you know, it's so important to be able to describe your project for people to understand in maybe 30 seconds, in a minute, or on a one page. In this quick time that we live in, sometimes all we have is a one page to show what our project is all about. I'm now able to say no to things. If it doesn't fit within our logic model, I can say no. So, you know, as things continue to come at us, this really helps us to prioritize and to be able to say no. Someone said, "I can do this," and this was actually related to evaluation. You know, there's oftentimes a disconnect between program implementers and the evaluation of the project. And so by seeing how everything is connected, it helps both sides to really understand their fit and to see that they can do this. This time took and the effort, it was a lot of time, it was effort, but it was worth it. Our team never would have gotten here otherwise. And so we understand that logic models and developing them can be difficult, can be really taxing on the brain, but the end result is far, far greater than not having one. It helped us to think as a team, to build a team program versus an individual program. And I think that is very important as a leader in this work, is to really creating buy-in and participation with the team. Next slide is using logic models for evaluation can be a powerful first step for evaluation. So, it's showing the when and the what to evaluate. Logic models should be the basis of your evaluation. With your logic model, you can determine what you want to learn through your evaluation and what you will measure. It can be a useful tool to reach agreement about what will be evaluated at different times during the program implementation, and it ensures shared expectations about what will be measured and when. Next slide. So, we live in an accountability era, right? So what gets measured gets done. If you don't measure your results, you can't tell success from failure. If you can't see your success, then it cannot be rewarded. If you can't reward your success, you're probably rewarding failure. If you can't see success, you can't learn from it. And if you can't recognize your failure, you can't correct it. If you can demonstrate results, you can win public support. And so that is why it's so important that we continue to not keep our logic models on the shelf, but we continue to have it be a living document that goes from planning to implementation to evaluation. Next slide. Next slide. So, how do we measure our success of our program? How do we invest in our program or in our target audience? How do we know that our program worked? A clear logic model illustrates the purpose and the content of your program. It makes it easier to develop meaningful evaluation questions from a variety of program vantage points, whether it's the context, the implementation, or results. So on your slide on the top, we have the basic flow of a logic model. On the bottom shows the different kinds of evaluations that are relevant to each part of your logic model. So, we start off with needs or assets assessments will help your problem statement. So that's even before your inputs. But it's really helping to develop the case for your problem. The next one is the process evaluation. The process evaluation would focus on the inputs and the activities to answer the questions about what was invested in your program, whether activities were implemented as planned, and whether these activities reached the intended audience. Next is outcome evaluation. So outcome evaluation focuses more intensively on the indicators demonstrating the short-term, the intermediate, or the long-term outcomes if they were achieved in sequence and within time frames. And so when we were planning, using logic models for planning, the question was about how, right? And it was working from right to left of determining the how. When looking at logic models for evaluation, the question is really about the why. And it's the why moving from left to right. So why did the inputs lead to the activities? Why did those activities lead to the outputs? Why did those outputs lead to the outcomes? And how and why did those outcomes lead to impact? So what we have done is we've purposely created just a very quick overview of how using logic models can be used for program planning, for program evaluation, for program implementation, and for program evaluation. And then we wanted to dedicate a lot of the time actually to a special keynote guest, as well as time to do question and answers. So I will hand it over to Marietta to introduce our guest.
Thank you so much, Marianne, for all of the rich information that you just presented. At this moment, I would like to go ahead and introduce my colleague, Ben Cabangon. Ben is a capacity building manager with Capacity for Health, which is the capacity building program of the Asian and Pacific Islander American Health Forum. Ben has provided technical assistance and trainings in organizational development and management to community-based organizations and jurisdictional health departments across the country. Last year, Ben and the Capacity for Health team provided grant writing trainings to staff of over 30 community-based organizations throughout California. He has over 10 years of experience providing direct patient care, project management, and program design in the HIV/AIDS sector. Previous to joining the Health Forum, Ben served as an associate director at the Asian and Pacific Islander Wellness Center in San Francisco, California. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Marietta, and thank you again, Marianne, for giving us a really comprehensive overview of the uses of logic models over the life of a program. Logic models today, though Marianne has given you an overview, a very linear approach to logic models, can be very complex. I've seen logic models that are designed like trees, where the roots are the inputs and the leaves are the impacts. I've seen other logic models that are shaped like flowers. So people today are essentially becoming a lot more creative and innovative in the ways that they illustrate the theory behind their programs. But no matter how creative and complex your logic model design, my tip is to make sure that an average reviewer can understand your logic clearly. That's really important when you think about it if you are developing a logic model for the purpose of a proposal when you're applying for a grant. Sometimes grant reviewers are a mix of, or it's a panel of mixed providers, clients, and so forth. So when you have a mix of reviewers, you want to make sure that the average reviewer can understand your logic. You can test the clarity of your logic model by asking peers who aren't involved in your design to speak back to you the relationship of your logic model components. So if you've gone through many iterations and drafts of your logic model, ask a coworker or maybe a friend that's not involved in your work to look at your logic model and ask them to communicate what they're interpreting back to you to see if you're creating a logic model that's clear. My second tip is to don't force yourself to think too linearly. So in reality, things don't always follow a temporal sequence or progress linearly. Consider how things happen in real life. Do things happen in cycles, in loops, in reiterations, or interactions? Think about how you can visually depict those types of relationships in the logic model. Just remember to think in terms of the logical pattern that you expect outcomes to be achieved. And just as Marianne said, that's the short term, the intermediate, and the long term. They don't have to be linear, but they have to make sense in that pattern. My next tip, if you get stuck, try creative approaches to help your thinking. Marianne gave a really good advice about starting from impact and then working your way left to the inputs. So think about moving right to left or left to right. Maybe start on different components of the logic model and then work on building relationships between different components and then build your logic model out that way. And my next tip is to create a logic modeling design team and process. You don't have to be isolated and create logic models on your own. Include a committee or a team that has a mix of different strategists. That can be staff directly involved in the delivery of the proposed program. You can even involve some leaders from your clients to be involved in logic modeling, maybe even a board member if they have the time. A mix of thinkers can help you consider diverse approaches and provide you realistic and real-time feedback. But remember that you drive the process of creating that logic model. In terms of a process, my team and I, we like to use the wall to brainstorm our designs. We use Post-it notes, Post-it posters, those sticky posters, and we put up all of our ideas on the wall and try to create a comprehensive pattern from inputs to impact, moving around Post-its as we discuss on how our theory can work. You can also assign smaller teams to tackle each logic model component individually. Have folks meet and discuss and brainstorm ideas for inputs. Have a separate team discuss activities, and have each of those small teams consider the different relationships between each of the components. After those teams have met, maybe what you could do is have a reconvening. Everybody presents their brainstorms, and then you, as the driver of the logic modeling process, can create a first draft of a logic model compiling everybody's ideas and brainstorms, and then create more reiterations through that process. Lastly, my last tip is that your logic model is dynamic. Just as Marianne said, as you begin implementation, remember that things may happen over time that are out of your control. Maybe your assumptions that you made during the proposal or logic modeling process are no longer relevant when you finally get the funding and it's time to implement the program. Or maybe you're funded at a lesser amount than you requested. So re-examine the context over time. An intervention, for example, an intervention design involving developing or convincing more grocers to offer fresh produce may be impeded if suddenly community vegetable gardens are established all over the neighborhood. So remember to re-examine the context of which your program exists, and then adjust and update. You know, adjusting and updating over time is part of the process. But don't immediately cross out certain outcomes or lower your performance targets just because of implementation challenges. Try your best to find creative ways to address implementation challenges and strive towards achieving your original outcomes and targets. So think about how you can creatively incorporate new contexts through the life of your project. So that's my 5 tips, and I hope that those are helpful for you. I know that there's a mix of expertise in this webinar in terms of logic models, so we'd love to hear what your tips are as well.
Thank you so much, Ben, for sharing your real tips with our audience today. We're going to spend now the next few minutes addressing any questions that may come up. Please go ahead and start typing your questions into the question panel, and we'll address them accordingly. So we have various questions asking whether or not we'll be sending out copies of the slides, and the answer to that is yes. We will be sending them through email, and then that will go along with a link to our evaluation. So we would really appreciate if you take that evaluation. And then also, in addition to that, this webinar is also recorded.
It looks like there's a question about where you can find samples of logic models. Sometimes it's really helpful just to do a really average Google search, a Google image search, and type in logic models. Through there, you'll get a plethora of different logic model designs that exist in the public sphere. You can also go to the links that Marianne has provided of different foundations that offer online resources for developing logic models. They usually compile a list as well. I'll also talk to Marianne after the webinar to see if we can build a fact sheet of some sources where you can find logic models that can be helpful for all of you as well.
Yeah. So towards the end of this slide, I do have a list of resources that I used in developing this presentation. One piece I wanted to highlight in there is that the Health Forum hosts an online resource called Capacity for Health, and on that site, there are a number of resources there.
I see a question for Marianne. It says, Marianne, Ben just shared 5 real-time tips. Do you have any additional tips that you can share with the group as well?
So a lot of my insights came through the presentation, but I would say my best advice is to start in with logic models and to keep it as simple and clean as possible. So we didn't talk a lot about grant writing, but for me, one of the first things I do when I've convened my team and we're doing grant writing is that we develop the logic model. And to me, it's the best way that everyone then becomes on the same page about what is the project that we're proposing, and it helps within the writing of all the different parts if we have multiple people who are writing the grant. On the flip side, by starting and ending with logic models and keeping it simple and clean, imagine that you're a grant reviewer and that you just worked an 8-hour day or more, and this is an added responsibility for you to review grants. And it's probably not going to be one grant, but it's going to be multiple grants. So make it simple for the reviewers, make it easy for them to understand your project. And by making it easy to understand your project and answering their questions, and a lot of times it happens through that one-page logic model, you can have a higher chance of being funded.
The next question is, do you find yourself updating a logic model during the implementation stage after learning the predicted model was not as successful or strategic as initially thought to be?
I could take a stab at that question. Yeah, I definitely do find myself updating logic models periodically. One thing that I like to do with my teams is to have strategy sessions regularly, whether that's every month or quarterly. And what we do is we revisit a lot of our theories of change or our logic models that exist that guide the life of our program, that guides us towards the impact that we want to see in the communities that we're serving. The reason why you should have those strategy type of meetings periodically is to revisit and see if contexts have changed, to see if other relevant issues in the community are coming that would, I guess, encourage you to want to revisit some things that you've written in your logic. I guess the main point I'm trying to make is that it's dynamic and it's never fixed. So you could always use opportunities to revisit the theory that's driving the implementation of your program. What's really important to consider if you do is to see if your project officer, whoever your funder is, if they have strict oversight on your program designs, to make sure that they're involved in those conversations as well. Marianne, do you have any insight on it?
I would only add that I think that if you're not constantly updating your logic model and your project, then you're not doing your project well, right? Because things change, situations change, opportunities arise, and so I think it is a good thing that you continually update your logic model throughout your implementation project, your process.
The next question has two parts, so I'll say the first part first. Are there particular things that you think are different about building a logic model for a coalition as opposed to a logic model for an individual organization?
And Marietta, what is the second part of the question? Is it related to this also?
Yes. Are there aspects of a coalition that could manifest themselves differently in a logic model?
So Marianne, my first initial reaction to that question is that the approach to developing logic models is pretty standard. You start with the impact that you think you want to make in the community or in your region. A coalition is probably one of the strategies that you're using in your activities or different components of the program design. So I don't think it's going to change a logic model. It'll make a logic model a lot bigger and probably a lot more complex. But the elements, I think, are still going to be central. It's still going to have the inputs, the activities, the outcomes, and the impact that you're attempting to address. Marianne, you have a lot more experience in managing coalitions, so I'd love to hear what you think as well.
Thank you, Ben. So I agree that the intentions are the intentions and the inputs, the activities, the outputs, the outcomes, and the impact, regardless of if it's an individual organization or a coalition, you're trying to solve a problem, and you have that theory of how you will solve the problem. And so the logic model is just a tool to help you to get there, right? Because working in coalitions, you're probably working on larger, more broader issues, more complex and more people that are coming in to provide their resources, to provide their skills, that I actually think that logic models then are even more important for you to be able to then communicate to the larger group what you are doing. I think that a logic model would be very instrumental then in the implementation. So for new members coming in, that they can already kind of come in and say, this is the playbook of what this coalition is doing, and this is what I can contribute to that playbook. For new staff coming in, it always helps you remember why you're doing this work. And then when you have differences of opinions and different groups who may want to move your project in one way or the other, you can always bring back the logic model, which is your plan, and really keeping the conversation focused on why you all are all coming together. Are there aspects? The second part of the question is, are there aspects of the coalition that would manifest themselves differently in a logic model? You know, I think it's all in the details. So your inputs may be different, your activities may be different, but regardless if you're working at an individual organization or a coalition level, there are inputs, there are activities, there are going to be outputs that will lead you to your outcomes and impact.
Thank you, Marianne. I have another question. I am from a small organization and have been having difficulty getting grants, even though I feel like I have a good plan and good logic model. Do you have any recommendations on what I can do better?
So, Ben, I will start. You know, honestly, I feel your pain. I think, you know, for a lot of our Asian Americans, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities, you know, we are minorities within minority populations. So it is hard for us to be able to show the need, show the need even and our good plan even when we have a good logic model. My recommendation would be, or my ask would be, have you tried to work in coalition? As the previous question was about coalition, is that, you know, are there ways that you can work in coalition, join a larger organization to make their project more diverse, more competitive? I would recommend that as one way to be able to be more competitive in your projects. Ben, any other thoughts?
I was exactly going to say the same exact thing. I think about what your organization has expertise in and leverage that strength in collaborating with a partner organization in your neighborhood or in your region. I think the stronger the coalition, the more likely, the more stronger you'll appear to a funder. Yes, I was exactly thinking the same thing, Marianne.
Yeah, and then, you know, if there is not an existing coalition within your area, then maybe it is that you are the ones who form the coalition, and sometimes that coalition can be a stronger voice, or you find another organization that in the newly formed coalition that you created that can serve as that lead, that would be received more favorably by the funder.
Thank you. The last question that I see here is, do you recommend any good websites where you can practice logic model design?
Yeah, it seems like Marianne's going to have a slide that will talk about the different resources that she's pulled together. On the top of my head, what I have used to practice logic model development is the Kellogg Foundation Logic Model Development guide is really great and is available to download for free from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. You can also look at the CDC's website. They also provide logic models and essentially lots of toolkits on program planning that can be of assistance. Lastly, you could go to schools of public health from major universities. They also have toolkits that they provide to a lot of their graduate students that are available to the public. Some really good ones are the University of Kansas and also the University of Arizona are they provide great toolkits. And it looks like the slide you're seeing right now is what Marianne has put together. Would you like to discuss a little bit about that, Marianne?
Yeah, so the opportunities are endless for resources. And so, been mentioned earlier, just Googling, I think that's probably the best way. These 4 are the particular resources that I pulled from for this presentation. I know that Marietta will be sending out a follow-up email with the slides. And so, Ben, I do like your idea of putting together a list. And so maybe we will at least add on some additional resources that Ben had mentioned. Also, I want to encourage if others on the call who have found good links and good resources to please go ahead and put that into the chat box, and then we can include that as well in the email wrap-up.
Thank you so much, Ben and Marianne, for all of the resources and the rich information that you provided for today's webinar. And I'd also like to give a special thanks to everybody that's called in for the webinar today and joined Beyond the Basics, Using Logic Models Through the Life of Your Program. This webinar is the first of a 3-part grant writing series. And if you have not done so already, I please urge you to register for our May 27th webinar entitled Using Logic Models to Inform Your Evaluation, as well as our June 3rd webinar entitled Getting Your Grant Proposal Right, Understanding Budget Basics. That will be the end of our presentation, and we'd like to thank you so much. Please visit us online at www.apiahf.org. And you'll also see Marianne's contact information there. Should you have any additional questions, you can feel free to email or call her direct line. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a nice day.